Hello, and thank you very much for listening. At the beginning of my presentation today, I would like to draw your attention to this miniature of Noah's Ark from a 13th century manuscript of the first universal chronicle in French, Histoire ancienne jusqu'à César. This miniature, depicting a biblical episode related in the chronicle, exemplifies, I believe, some of the tensions and opportunities that I will describe later in this paper. On the one hand, we see here an ark full of people, animals, birds of every description, a capsule of opportunity and hope in the face of the danger of the flood. On the other, there is a boundless sea and an eventful, unpredictable journey ahead before this ark can safely navigate to harbour. In this paper, I will comment on the opportunities presented by the digital for humanities scholarship and for the creation of humanities data, but I would also like to outline the dangers and pitfalls that await any explorer venturing on the digital path. The purpose of this presentation, titled Preserving the Materiality of the Digital, is twofold. Firstly, I will address the importance of data management and planning for data sustainability for any digital project. And secondly, as a case study, I will present data management solutions adopted by the project titled The Values of French Language and Literature in the European Middle Ages, led by Professor Simon Bont, and in the edition of the Histoire ancienne jusqu'à César chronicle produced by this project. The Values of French Language and Literature in the European Middle Ages is an ERC-funded project that a team in the French department at King's College London is working on in collaboration with colleagues at King's Digital Lab at the same institution and with the Dictionnaire étymologique de l'ancien français in Heidelberg. The project has been running for the past 5 years and is due to end at the end of 2020. But, however, in more ways than one, this moment is also a sort of beginning, an important point in the digital life of the project, when all digital outputs will be published and it will be up to users, to researchers, teachers, and the general public to enjoy the project and make use of its results. In this context, preservation of digital outputs and making project data available is absolutely key to this important point. On the slide, I have underlined the names of colleagues who have been instrumental right from the start in setting up a data management plan for the values of French and planning for the future. Hannah Morcus, who has been a part of the project since its beginnings. Geoffroy Noël, who has been key in designing the software and who has been working closely with the research team. And Dan Crane from the library services at the university, whose help and advice were invaluable. The main digital output of the project is the digital edition of 2 manuscripts of the Chronicle, an edition for which the team have used digitized copies of the manuscripts made available on library websites and occasionally consulted the originals in the libraries. What was produced, the digital edition that was produced by the project, is a kind of digital object, seemingly devoid of materiality of its own, unlike the manuscripts themselves or unlike any possible paper edition, and timeless. And I believe that there are still certain stereotypes that persist, stereotypes about the digital, and there may be a tendency to still think of the digital as something that is immune to decay and destruction, unlike the material objects. And the digital may appear as something that requires minimal care, minimal attention and curation, and that can be out there on the web for forever. And yet, over the past 10-20 years, the peculiar materiality of the digital has become more and more apparent. Not unlike other artifacts, digital objects require care, storage, maintenance, and curation, but they can also become obsolete, lose their functionality, and may need eventually to be discarded or recycled. Some of the risks that digital materiality presents have direct bearing on the life cycle of digital projects in the humanities. Those risks include um, software obsolescence, growing security risks, maintenance and storage costs, and one may also want to mention lack of ownership, something that may affect digital objects that were created for the purpose of a particular project with a limited funding period. Although the data may still be of interest and may still be pertinent to the wider research community, sites produced by such projects may become obsolete or lose their functionality, and the original team may have moved away from the institution and may no longer be involved in the project's life. And another thing that worth mentioning is that even despite the availability of search engines and research catalogs, with lack of curation, some and lack of adequate metadata, some data sets may become, even though they are online, may become invisible and may not be discoverable, thus falling through the cracks of the digital. And in this respect, it's interesting to mention the experience of the King's Digital Lab that was first created in 2015, and at the time it inherited from the Department of Digital Humanities at King's College London around 100 digital projects, some in the form of public websites, some in the form of staging sites or data sets that and a lot of them were affected by some or all problems just mentioned. So King's Digital Lab team members initiated an in-house archiving and sustainability project that ran for the last 5 years. And they researched the history and usage of every single project. They identified the original team and discussed with them options for the future. And those options are listed on their website, and there is a copy on the right-hand side of the slide here. Even when a site no longer funded and without an option for migrating to a new host had to be switched off and its contents needed to be archived, King's Digital Lab preserved the URL of the site with a short description of the project to preserve a trace of the digital object as it used to be. And this is why for all new and current projects, the options for the project's afterlife or project's digital future are discussed right from the start and throughout the development of the project itself. And King's Digital Lab work together with the partners to make sure that this future is possible and that there is funding for post-project hosting and maintenance. And considerations of data management, not only in sciences but also increasingly in humanities, are becoming key to planning and implementing any research project. And most funders are now require a data management plan, and especially in the case of digital humanities projects, obviously. And academic libraries, for example, at King's College London, are providing researchers with detailed information and assistance and help researchers design and implement a data management plan and also ensure the future of the data set beyond the project's end. In 2016, an international group of librarians and data practitioners called Force 11 got together and devised a set of guidelines for improving data management from collection to post-project. These principles are referred to as FAIR principles, and they're not a rigid requirement, but rather they are designed to improve findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability of all research data and metadata, thus ensuring that all datasets collected have a life after the project is completed, and that data collected for one purpose may conceivably be used for another project, maybe even in a different discipline. All these considerations outlined above informed approaches to data in the Values of French project, not least in the choice of the text encoding initiative TEI standard of XML encoding that is used for the edition, and that's a standard that is widely accepted for as a standard for scholarly digital editions around the world, and it allows, among other things, rendering of different versions of the text from the same file. As mentioned before, the project's major digital output is a digital edition of two important manuscripts of the first universal chronicle in French, Histoire ancienne, jusqu'à César, composed in Flanders in the early 13th century. And one manuscript edited is a manuscript of the first reduction, and the other manuscript is the manuscript of the second reduction. So it's a universal chronicle, and the manuscripts of the first reduction start with creation, so with Genesis, and we've seen the Noah's Ark, and with César, and manuscripts of the second reduction start a bit later with the story of Thebes, and predictably, the compiler of the chronicle used a lot of sources, ranging from Latin sources such as Historia Scholastica by Petrus Comestor to medieval French romances. And it's interesting to note that medieval textuality, one could say, and especially in the case of texts like the Histoire ancienne, seems to share with modern approaches to data a preoccupation with preservation and discoverability of information. Just as a quick reminder, I'm displaying here a couple of extracts of references to authority. Sometimes they are real, sometimes they're fictional, that the scribe following the compiler is making in one of the manuscripts edited by the project. So at one point he says, as Bede attests, and as Orosius says and attests, and as Eutropius bears witness or attests. And texts, languages, media may change, so those containers of knowledge may change, but knowledge needs to be communicated. It needs to remain key, and this is, of course, a major concern. And so what are the main functionalities of the website? What can you do when you visit the Values of French website, tvof.ac.uk? In the text viewer, got a copy here, you can choose, you can consult the edition by opening one, two, or more panels with text, and you can choose between two manuscripts that are being edited, or you can display them side by side. You can see the semi-diplomatic edition or the interpretive edition, which is not quite a critical edition, but an edition that requires a lot of editorial intervention nevertheless. And you can navigate the edition by section, so Genesis or Thebes, for example, and by paragraph. And you can synchronize editions of the two manuscripts to the same passage by pressing this link button. So the interpretive edition normalizes medieval spelling and introduces some modern punctuation, and it also includes notes that can be accessed by clicking the note button. So then they are displayed that explain the sources of each paragraph, and also provide in some information about the language of the chronicle, and introduce variant readings wherever needed from a selection of other manuscript witnesses. There's also an option for exploring the alignment of manuscripts, including 2 edited manuscripts and a number of other manuscript witnesses. So here in this view, you can click on a box opposite the paragraph number, and then you will see the rubric introducing this paragraph in each manuscript and the location of this rubric. And this functionality provides a sort of map for navigating the manuscripts and knowing exactly where you are at each point. And last but not least, thanks to collaboration with the Dictionnaire étymologique de l'ancien français in Heidelberg, the team of the Values of French is finishing lemmatization of every word of the interpretive edition of the 2 manuscripts. And the search function allows to search for a specific form of a word, a lemma, or a personal name, and it displays words in their contexts in the text. So here I've got the word, I think the lemma mostré to show, and we've got a list of instances where this word is used in its different forms, with references to the place in the edition where it is encountered. So how is it all produced? Here is a slide created by Hannah Morcus last year together with colleagues at in consultation with colleagues from King's Digital Lab, and it showcases the editorial workflow adopted for the project. And everything starts with a series of XML files, XML-TI files that the editors work with, that are later aggregated and then undergo a series of transformations. And then there is, we come to a web publication in the form of the edition and the search. And but everything starts from the TI files here. And the website of the Values of French project will be updated in the coming months as we are finalizing interpretive editions of some chapters, and as we are working on completing lemmatization, and it will remain available in its finished form for another 10 years, hosted and maintained by King's Digital Lab. This is, I hope, where another new exciting chapter of the project will begin. And to supplement the publication of the website, but also to give researchers and teachers access to the source data sets, those XML files that we mentioned before, and to ensure the preservation of the data possibly beyond the life cycle of the site, the Values of French team, with careful guidance from the King's College Library, decided to expose project data on the open source platform called Figshare. That platform was recommended by the library service. And the data sets have their digital object identifiers and the Values of French language and literature in the European Middle Ages page on Figshare can be accessed by following this link, or by searching the name of the project, or names of the team members, or possibly by category and keyword. And from this page, it is possible to download original aggregated TI XML files that are at the source of the edition. So we've got the edition file, the alignment file, and the lemmatization and search file. And also there is a section for software that gives a link to the GitHub repository where all the scripts are stored. And finally, although the ocean of data is still enormous, and navigating it and finding one's way is really difficult, in this miniature from another manuscript of the Histoire ancienne, we see the little white dove who has come back to the ship, to the ark, and it's a sign that um, there is a safe harbor is somewhere close by. And I'd like to thank you for listening, for your attention, and I hope that you will explore the website and the data repository. And together with my colleagues at the project, I will be looking forward to hearing about your experiences and the application of this data for your own research and for your own teaching. Thank you very much.